It's officially June, guys, which means that we're only a few days away till WWDC, and so today we have some updates on the hardware we can see at the event, and there's some good news regarding the MacBook Pros, but not so good news regarding the M1X Mac Mini. But first, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors, and with that being said, let's just tuck in. Right, so the first report is great news regarding those new MacBooks, because obviously for the last few days we've been under the confusion regarding Mini LED and whether it's coming on the new MacBook Pro or not. Because for the longest time we were pretty sure we would see Mini LED on these new MacBooks, and then Digitimes comes out of nowhere and just says, hey, it might be delayed till 2022. But now they've come out of nowhere again and they said, hey, forget about that report, because apparently they're back on track to be released in Q3 of this year. But obviously some of you might be wondering, WWDC happens in Q2, right? So does that mean we're not seeing these MacBook Pros at the actual event? Well, pretty much like I've been saying in all my videos, yes, the MacBook Pro will be announced at WWDC, but don't expect it to ship till mid-July, because much like the iPad Pro and the iMac, expect a staggered release for the new MacBook Pros. This would align perfectly with the next generation Apple Silicon SoC, which is the M1X, apparently also shipping in July, so yes, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a staggered release with these new MacBooks. Now obviously we still have no idea on the exact timelines, but if I were to predict, I think we could see a release in mid-July, and so pre-orders would be in early July. So yes, on the whole that's fantastic news. We should be seeing Mini LED on these new MacBooks, and they're on track for a WWDC release. Oh, and by the way, in case you don't believe me, John has already confirmed this, and also forgot to mention this earlier, but July is technically when Q3 begins, and so yeah, this report does make sense. Right, so let's now move on to the RAM and GPU configurations with the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro, because some of you have asked me, is the 14-inch going to get all of the options? Because right now, the 4-port 13-inch is restricted to, of course, 32GB of RAM and a weaker GPU. But thankfully, that might not be the case with the 14-inch, because according to renders by Ian, this might be the first time the compact model gets pretty much all the upgrades the bigger model has. So yes, according to Ian, who apparently leaks as well now, but anyways, he's telling me that we can expect 64 gigs of RAM and the 32-core GPU with the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Now interestingly, Ian also says that we could see different clock speeds with the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now that would make sense, because the 14-inch is a smaller machine with a more restricted thermal envelope, and so it does make sense to make a slightly weaker version of the M1X built for the 14-inch MacBook Pro. And also interestingly, Maguire Wood also found references to two variants of the M1X SoC. And so yes, I do think it might be likely that we could see a slightly weaker M1X on the 14-inch, but it should get the same GPU and RAM options as the MacBook Pro 16-inch. However, I do want to say that Ian has no track record whatsoever, so take the information with a grain of salt. But also, if you think about it, that would actually ruin the pricing strategy Apple has right now, because you're paying $600 more for the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and you're getting marginal performance upgrades, and that would make it a pretty bad deal. So yeah, either Apple's gonna make the 16-inch MacBook Pro a little cheaper, which I highly doubt, and so maybe Ian is wrong about this, so definitely take the information with a grain of salt, like I said. Right, so let's now touch on the pricing, because obviously there have been rumors about the prices staying the same as the outgoing models, so we should expect $1,800 for the 14-inch and $2,400 for the 16-inch. But I do want to say that with this update about Mini LED coming to these MacBooks, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a price increase, because we saw with the iPad Pro, the 12.9-inch size was $100 more than its predecessor for Mini LED alone, and so I'm expecting the same to happen with these MacBooks. Expect them to be $100 more than their predecessors. And well, let's now end on some potential bad news, because John Prosser says he hasn't heard anything about the M1X Mac Mini launching at WWDC, so maybe we're not gonna see it in a few days. Now this would be devastating news, but John is a pretty credible leaker, and so if he hasn't heard anything about the Mac Minis launching very soon, that could be hinting at a launch that's maybe a little further away than we initially thought. To be honest, Mark Gurman has said in the recent past, the M1X Mac Mini is not a focus for Apple, and so they can delay it, or maybe even cancel it, which by the way I don't think will be the case. But that does clearly illustrate that Apple does not really care about the Mac Mini, and that does make sense because it is a pretty low volume product compared to the MacBook Pro. Now before you Mac Mini fans start crying yourself to sleep, I do want to say there is still a chance we could see it, mainly because we have got renders of the actual product, and usually when we start seeing renders, that means the release is pretty near. Also, you might remember that 9to5Mac found references to 2 new Mac Minis, and usually when we see references, that does mean the release is pretty near once again, so yeah, I do think there is a very small chance we could still see it at WWDC. If not, then maybe the M1X Mac Mini launches alongside the iMac Pro at the end of the year. So yeah, that's pretty much all the updates regarding WWDC hardware, but let me know in the comments below, do you still think we're going to be getting an M1X Mac Mini in a few days? Anyways, thank you for watching, make sure to like and subscribe. For the latest Apple news and rumors, check out the video in the icon above about the iPad Air getting OLED, and on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya peeps!